This is the moment that left Star Wars fans perplexed. Many critics of The Last Jedi opposed how writer-director Rian Johnson tarnished the legacy of Luke Skywalker. As Mark Hamill himself puts it,
how did the most optimistic, hopeful character in the galaxy turn into this hermit who says it's time for the Jedi to end? I read that and I said, what? I mean, that's not what a Jedi does.
Clearly, Luke did not meet audience expectations, or those of Rey. But this was a bold and very deliberate decision on Johnson's part, and one that highlights a crucial component of effective storytelling: the gap between expectation and result. It's not my intention to justify Luke's nature, but rather to analyse it in the context of Rey's character arc as an example of how the gap functions. Robert McKee writes, rather than evoking cooperation from his world, the hero's action provokes forces of antagonism that open up the gap between his subjective expectation and the objective result, between what he thought would happen when he took his action and what in fact does happen, between his sense of probability and true necessity. True necessity is the absolute truth about the character's world, a truth that they can only discover through the difference between what they expected to happen before an action and what actually happens. The character and audience expectations are based on what they understand about their world, but when the result contradicts that expectation, they learn that the world was not as they originally perceived. Luke throwing the lightsaber over his shoulder is a clear example of the gap. So to understand how it works, let's look at Rey's arc and how the gap shapes her understanding. At the start of the film, Rey's desire is to get Luke to join the rebels and teach her about the Force. But more deeply, Rey wants to know who her parents are, and she looks for the same answers in Kylo Ren. These are her conscious desires, or what Michael Haig calls her outer motivation. The outer motivation becomes his reward for finding the courage to overcome his inner conflict, to change and grow and do what is right. So what is Rey's inner conflict?
Your parents threw you away like garbage.
They didn't.
They did, but you can't stop needing them. It's your greatest weakness. Looking for them everywhere, in Han Solo, now in Skywalker.
Rey thinks she needs to understand who her parents are, for the same reasons she goes to Luke and Kylo Ren. She is doubtful about her power and her place.
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
Rey hasn't accepted the responsibility that her power asks of her. What Rey needs to learn throughout the film is that she already possesses great power, and that she must be independent and not look for support in her parents or Luke. This is the inner conflict that she must overcome. Thus, Luke's reluctance to train her and join the rebels is fundamental to Rey's growth. If he joins the rebels in this scene, Luke would take the weight of responsibility off Rey's shoulders. It would also mean that expectation matched result, what Robert McKee calls a pointless pace killer. When expectation meets result, the gap stays closed. The world is as the character had assumed, and therefore there is no room for growth. The gap is where characters learn. It is the source of character development. But Luke's reluctance isn't just driven by the requirements of the plot. He is afraid of the Force and its capacity to corrupt since Kylo Ren turned, and as a result,
You've closed yourself off from the Force.
Luke himself says he was hubristic in thinking he could train a new generation of Jedi. His own expectation failed him, and the result has left him rejecting his powers. Ren, on the other hand, is consumed by a thirst for power. Therefore, Luke fears that Rey could go the same way. Michael Haig writes, character growth begins when the hero recognises his own similarity to the nemesis and difference from the reflection. In Rey's arc, Luke is the reflection and Ren the nemesis. Rey accepts that Luke won't help her or give her the answers she needs. So when she goes to Ren thinking he'll turn, she is also looking for internal validation by finding out who her parents are. When Ren kills Snoke and they both defeat his bodyguards, Rey demonstrates her true power by saving Ren. We assume Ren has joined the rebels, opening the gap, but in fact he usurps Snoke. Rey realises the truth about her parents.
They were nobody.
Any expectations of their significance shatter, and the result is that she is alone. Neither Luke, Ren nor her parents can help. And at this moment of self-realisation,
Join me.
but Rey overcomes the doubts about her power and place and assumes the responsibilities that they demand. And the gap is the function by which this meaning is generated. We can only learn these truths about Rey's character and her world through the disparity between what she expected and what she now knows. I don't envy the job Johnson had with this film, as it seems certain criteria had to be met for episode 9. Rey must be the Jedi with the responsibility of saving the galaxy, and Ren must be the antagonist, a compelling one given his backstory and inner conflict, unlike the shallow evil archetype of Snoke. But I can see what angered Star Wars fans. Luke Skywalker's desire and learning curve throughout the film felt quite contrived and uncharacteristic of the original Luke. His major turning point comes through Yoda, somewhat of a deus ex machina, and I'm not convinced that he wouldn't help from the start. However, it is still plausible that after Kylo Ren turned, Luke would lose trust in the Force due to its potential for corruption. Luke could have been a very different character in these films, but I don't think he could have been the Luke of the original trilogy. It's clear from Rey's development that she is the new Luke Skywalker, and the stage has been set for an interesting episode 9. Any predictions?